If you're ever thinking about writing a book, here's my advice. Don't. Writing a book sucks. I've got my own book coming out next month and I must confess that I'm pretty nervous about it coming out. The trouble is that when you release a book, you're kind of exposing your thinking, and people are not shy to come forward and tell you that you're wrong and that you've misunderstood or thinking about things in the wrong way. People love to disagree with you. Now, I'm pretty thick-skinned, so a lot of the time that doesn't really worry me. But it does worry me when people I respect come along and tell me that I'm wrong. Clever people, people smarter than me. And that's what's going to happen, I know, with my book Digital Adaptation. I know that smart people are going to disagree with me. And worse still, I know that from a certain perspective, they're right. The problem is that in my book, I am very digitally focused. The whole book is about digital transformation, about how businesses need to transform for the new digital economy. I talk about digital teams, digital strategy, digital leaders. And there's a lot of people that would argue that talking about digital in that way is entirely wrong. They would say that digital is just a tool like any other. It's like the printing press or like electricity. You don't have a strategy for printing. You don't have a team for electricity. So why then do we talk about a digital strategy? Why do we talk about a digital team? Why is my book full of arguments for creating strategies, for creating teams around digital? And I can understand where they're coming from, and they've got a really good point here, that in a lot of ways it doesn't make sense. But it's the approach that I've decided to take, and I want to explain in this video why. You see, I believe that digital isn't just a tool, it's more than a tool. Digital has transformed our world. It has completely turned so many different areas upside down, from culture to government to business to society to how we interact with friends. It's all changed because of digital. And for me, a digital strategy isn't a strategy about how to use a tool. It's a strategy about how to cope with this changed reality that we now live in. If you go back a few hundred years when the printing press first came out, I can guarantee you that in the Vatican there was a lot of strategic meetings about the printing press. Now, the Vatican didn't care about the printing press, the tool. What they cared about is that it is enabling this new group of Lutherans to spread their message. It was enabling them to reach a far bigger audience than they would have been able to before the printing press was released. You see what I'm getting at there? It's not the tool that's the problem, it's the impact of the tool. It's the impact of the printing press or the impact of digital. So having a digital strategy isn't about what you do with the tool, it's about how you cope with what the tool has done to the world around you, the context within which you work. Companies need help adapting to this new reality. It's all very new for them, and people are still trying to wrap their heads around how digital fits into the bigger picture. Back in the Industrial Revolution, people used to build factories by water. They needed water in order to turn water wheels or to produce steam that would power the factories. But then electricity came along, and there was no longer a need for those factories to be built by water. Yet over a decade later, manufacturers, even though they'd implemented electricity, they were using it, they were still building their factories by water. They hadn't wrapped their head around the full consequences of what this new tool, this new technology meant. They hadn't fully understood it. And I think that's where we're at today. That yes, companies are using digital and making use of that tool, but they haven't fully wrapped their heads around the full scope of what digital has done, how much it's changed business, how much it's changed consumer behavior about society and all of the rest of it. If companies are going to fully understand and adapt to digital, they need to be shaken up. They need to be fundamentally restructured, and that means they need someone to come in to be a maverick, to challenge the status quo, to do things differently. They need to be shown what this new technology really is about, what it really means. Now, the industrialists solved this problem by hiring chief electricity officers, people whose job it was to integrate that technology into the organization. And I think we need the same today. We need a chief digital officer. We need digital teams that can help us make that transition, to move from the old way of thinking to the new. We need people to shake us up. The problem is that most senior management teams in organizations were brought up in a different business world. They learnt their skills in a different arena, and things have changed now. And we need new blood to replace old thinking. But that, of course, creates a problem, because ultimately we want to get to the point where digital is as ubiquitous as electricity is, that it's just everywhere, that everyone is using it, making use of it. And this is what those people that are uncomfortable with all this talk about digital teams, digital strategies, that's where they're worried, where they have a concern. But I think a lot of it depends on how you perceive digital teams and digital leaders and a digital strategy. If you just see it as a transitory thing, a temporary thing that's not going to be here forever, then it makes sense. To my mind, a digital team exists to educate, empower and support the organization. It's not there as this bastion of everything digital. Eventually, the digital team and the digital strategy can go away. Eventually, when we reach the point where digital is as invisible as electricity, you won't need that team anymore. For now, we need digital people. We need a digital strategy. We need a digital team to teach us and show us the potential of this new tool and how we integrate it. Let me give you an example about how digital is more than a tool and actually has a profound impact. And we need to think carefully about how it fits into our organization. Customer service has become enormously important because of the digital revolution. There was a point where consumers had very little in the way of choice. And if they were unhappy with a company, yes, they could moan to a few friends, but their impact was relatively minor. We don't live in that world anymore. Since digital and the web came along, now the competition are a click away. And if you're unhappy with the customer service you've received, you can cause a huge problem for companies. Just look up Dell Hell and you'll see what I mean. But to solve the customer service problem, you can't look at it in isolation. It can't just be solved through digital. The whole customer journey needs to be considered, from call centers to retail stores. All of these things make up good customer service. And that's what a lot of people are worried about, that they look at digital and they see the way companies are talking about digital and they say, hang on a minute, we can't take this in isolation. It's tied up with so many other business functions. Unfortunately, I don't think management are quite there yet. They don't see that. They see digital as a problem that needs fixing. They see it in isolation. And yeah, we could go and we could start talking about complete organizational change, and that we need to do this and we need to do that if we're going to get better customer service, that we need to sort out our retail stores, we need to sort out what happens when people pick up the phone. And we could just bombard senior management with all of these additional issues that exist beyond digital in order to solve the customer service problem. But I think that's a flipping hard sell, you know. I think it's going to be really difficult to go to senior management and say you need to make fundamental organisational change. Instead, I think start where they're looking. They're looking at digital at the moment. They're seeing a problem there that needs solving. And that is therefore where I think we have to begin. We have to start with digital and use that as a foothold to then start introducing these bigger issues that are going on. We need to use digital as our starting point. A digital team if it's put in place in the right way, should start collaborating and educating about these bigger issues. It should be working with the retail store end of the organization and the call center in order to provide a complete solution. And while it's doing that, it should be educating the organization about the fact that bigger and more wide sweeping changes need to happen. You see what I'm getting at here? Is that talking about digital is okay as a starting point, a beginning, a catalyst for change, if you like. The key is recognizing that the digital team and the digital strategy aren't there forever. You know, we no longer have chief electricity officers, but we needed them for a time, and I think we need digital teams and digital strategies for a season 2.